Good afternoon. Welcome to Black Muse. I'm Howard Sandifer, and we have a very special guest today, G. Thomas Allen.
Hello.
Thomas, you were the first male vocalist to win the prestigious Sarah Vaughan International Vocal Competition. What accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about what was it like to be in the competition, and how do you feel after having won the competition?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you. I'm still taking it in every day. It's the realization of just the mantle of sort of carrying on such a great legacy, and I'm honored. I'm grateful. It's changed my life. It's been a very defining moment in many, many ways. And you did point out being the first male, just that idea of the competition sort of embracing all voices, all lovers of jazz, in particular lovers of the divine one herself. So I'm just grateful and honored to have the award.
That's great. Just speaking of Sarah Vaughan, were you a fan of hers even before the competition?
Absolutely, without question. I have a short little story, sort of how I was introduced to her, and it was actually I was studying classical music, and I was working on a melisma in a particular in an aria, and the melisma is just a very it's a part within the song where you sort of show the vocality, sort of the flexibility and agility of what the voice can do. Excuse me. And I just couldn't get it. And I remember just thinking, like, well, what if I just sort of bebop it out, And at that time, I didn't necessarily know the terminology, but I had this feel of jazz, of like just sort of figuring it out. And my teacher's like, what are you doing? This is not jazz. And I'm like, well, I'm sort of using what I hear Sarah Vaughan do, and Ella, and I start calling people. And she's just like, well, if it's going to get you the rhythm, then fine. But when you sing it, you can't sing it that way. But that was sort of like my first introduction to sort of her voice in particular. So I would always just sort of listen to her.
Yeah. And you mentioned, of course, that you studied classical music as well. Want to talk more about that?
Okay.
But just curious, who are some of the other jazz artists, musicians, and singers that really influenced you?
Once I started listening to Sarah, I sort of got pulled into Billy Eckstine, which people don't talk about a lot. But once I sort of heard her voice, I just wanted to see sort of what was sort of influencing her. And I can certainly say going back and listening to him has been inspirational to me as a singer. I would say Carmen McRae. The list goes on. Mel Torme, Ella Fitzgerald. The list just, all of the greats, I think, all spoke to me in some way. And I think probably a little more contemporary or modern, maybe like Betty Carter, who was a little more experimental, avant-garde. But I would say they all sort of gave me a nugget to say, sort of advancing the narrative of what's possible in the jazz space.
Understand. But tell me now, you work, I know, here in Chicago. You're teaching here in Chicago. But were you born here in Chicago?
No, I am a country boy from Virginia, Danville, Virginia, right. About 2 hours from Richmond. 2 hours from Richmond. A church, we call it a city of churches and a lot of food. So, and it's still like that today. So no question. But I grew up in Virginia, and I moved for school for undergrad. I went to Morgan State University, so I moved out to Baltimore. Well, they say Baltimore instead of Baltimore, but moved out to Baltimore, and the rest was history. After there, I just sort of moved everywhere, and I moved to Chicago about 7 years ago. 7 years ago. So Chicago's home. It feels like home. Took a while to sort of get settled, but now I feel acclimated and settled, and I feel good. Love Chicago.
When did you know music was going to be for you? I mean, was it as a very young child, or did it happen later in school, or when did you know it was it?
I sort of always took to music. I would say probably elementary school. Like, my talent was always singing. You know, back in the days, teachers would say, all right, this is the talent showcase. Even in elementary, I sort of always led with singing. I did sing in the church as a really, really young guy. And I would say that's sort of where the love came from. And hear my mom listen to Luther Vandross and Donny Hathaway and Patti LaBelle. The list goes on and on. So all of that, I think, was sort of shaping my understanding of music, and black music in particular. Yeah.
And you mentioned the church. You spent some time in the church coming up.
Yeah. You know, I was there, I would say 80% of the week. So that was just the thing to do. Whether it was rehearsal, prayer, night, you know, it just, you know, it was just a part of my upbringing. And a key component of that was the music. And so I started with the choir and then sort of went to sort of leading tunes and songs. And that's always just sort of always been a part of what I do.
Right. Now, I know we've talked a little bit before, and you were saying that even as a professional, you spent a certain amount of time in in gospel music.
Yes. So I would say about 6 years ago, I connected with a gospel icon actually based out of Chicago, Ricky Diller.
Yes.
We connected on an album he entitled 10, and there was an opening arrangement of doxology that sort of paired more of choral setting with the traditional gospel, which was sort of new, I think, for his discography. And I sort of was the blend between both worlds. And so I came, did the piece, and the rest was history. You know, I thought I would just, you know, I didn't know what the future would look like, you know, specifically in that space. But fast forward, we've done 2 additional albums since that, one with Motown. The last one was Choir Master, which was nominated for a Grammy. And I did an arrangement of Let There Be Peace on Earth. And then there is one that actually just was released in January. So 3rd album in that space in gospel. And so I always say I'll never sort of lose that part, because that's sort of who I am. That's what I sort of connect to. And even speaking with the jazz, as you know, jazz sort of was birthed out of gospel music. So it's sort of, for me, it just feels all connected.
Right. And you said that so eloquently. You do something which is, I think, fairly rare, and you do it exceptionally well. The fact that you're able to navigate through those worlds of jazz, gospel, and classical. And you're very at home at all 3 of those genres. Talk a little bit about your classical background.
Yeah. So I did my undergrad at Morgan State, as I mentioned earlier, and the late Marilyn Thompson was my first voice teacher, and she didn't really know how to classify my voice, because I was coming from the church, and so I was really solid in sort of using the modal voice, chest voice, you know, and she would sort of hear how I would make my shifts so seamlessly, which we call the passaggio, you know, for all those music folks out there, sort of shifting through that. And I sort of had a natural coordination, if you will, of that. And she initially said, you'll be a tenor. You'll be a high tenor or a lyric tenor. And so she pulled out the flower aria from Carmen. And there's like a little ending where he sort of goes up to a high note. And I remember sort of starting that first pitch, sort of ascending, and I sort of stayed within more of a mixed voice. And she said, wait a minute, are you fully, like I need to hear that again. It's too pure, it's too clean, it's too effortless. And then she just went away from the song, and she just started like, hey, try this melisma, try this arpeggio. And she just started just doing random things. And it was more call and response. And she looked at me and she said, wait 1 second. And I was like, uh-oh, what's going on? And she said, I'll be back. And she went next door, knocked on the door. The other teacher was teaching. And she said, come over, I want you to hear something. And long story short, he came over. Vincent Stringer is his name. He was former vocal chair of Morgan and over the opera workshop there. Came into the studio, and she did some vocal releases. And she looked at him, and they looked at each other, and they sort of nodded. And she was like, young man, I think you may be a countertenor. And I just was like, what in the world? I was like, does that mean counter, above tenor? You know, I was just trying to put the pieces together. And, you know, it was such a special moment because I remember her saying, you know, you exploring this literature or this repertoire will give you such a great handle of your instrument. And I said, okay, let's do it. And so that was the start of my classical career in 2002.
Wow.
So 20 years ago. Yeah.
It's still going strong.
Yes, I know I look young. I know it was definitely 20 years ago.
You were only 10 years old when that happened.
I know.
That's good. So I mean, so the repertoire that you do now, I mean, you have this remarkable classical repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
You still got the church stuff happening, no doubt about it. And now the jazz world, we're excited about having you continue. I mean, you're just killing it, man. I mean, you know, some of the things that I've heard is just remarkable. And tell me, what are some of the things that you plan on doing? Some things that you would like to see happen in terms of your career right now? What are some of the goals that you have as an artist?
Yeah, I think for me, it's sort of finding a healthy blend between all of them. And I don't think I'm the first to do it. You know, Miles Davis, I mean, the list goes on of this idea of fusion and sort of bringing in rock and funk and R&B and blues and gospel and so forth. But I think, you know, what sets me apart is that I sort of put my foot in the classical space pretty heavy. You know, I made my operatic debut in 2014 with LA Opera. At the time, Placido Domingo was the artistic director, and I was in my second year of grad school, and so I was really sort of in it. So I really want to find a pairing of sort of some of that repertoire and how it translates to some of the more contemporary spaces. In fact, we were just sort of chatting about like Duke Ellington sacred concerts, you know, which is sort of an opportunity to sort of bring in the concert setting that you typically would see like at a theater or some type of symphony concert series, but not necessarily in the jazz club or those venues. But I love to sort of be the vehicle between how do we sort of bring that element back, you know, to the forefront of jazz or just any genre.
And let's talk about your voice. The one word I use to describe it is angelic. And again, you got a remarkable range. Thinking of, keep comparing you with Sarah, but you've got this remarkable range. Beautiful. A question I know you must get asked often, but the upper register, when you're singing, is that falsetto or is that actually your natural range?
You know, that's such a good question. Where do I start? Well, here's the thing. The very idea of falsetto, you immediately think artificial. And I think, well, I'm confident in what I do isn't artificial. And I think there's elements or there are opportunities where singers can engage in falsetto, male voice in particular, but I think it's more along the line of for sound effects or to sort of give certain qualities to whatever the melodic line is that's not really fully supported. And so when you think of like the Temptations and the soprano line singing Silent Night, I would say that singer's probably a falsettolist because I don't think they could do that for, you know, a whole show, you know. Right. But for that one moment, they can sort of hold that line and that pitch and sort of blend with the others. And another example is like barbershop harmony, you know, especially when it's all male voices and you have the upper voices. That approach is more so falsettolist. And the difference is what I do, it's really just an extension of my chest voice, where I'm sort of relying a little more on mixed voice and head voice, but I would certainly say it's closer to natural than being false. You know, when it's false, it's a little airy, and the vocal folds, not to get too technical, but they're just not fully engaged. You know, and you can almost hear it. It almost sounds hunty or hooty. You know, but my top, middle, low, it's sort of the coordination of sort of going through the different shifts are pretty even and solid, you know, whereas I don't necessarily feel like when I'm singing I have to sing low or high. I'm just singing. Right. And depending on where the notes are in the key, I adjust placements, you know. So it's really a more sophisticated coordination of sound, of the control of sound. Just, you know, so I think you would say, if someone said head voice, I can understand that because there is some head tone, like I would say, there's some head tone within it, especially within the top notes. Okay. You know, especially if you want to come off of the voice. If I did, in a sentimental mood, I'm sort of, and that was like a moment of sort of settling into mixed voice, but still sort of using head voice to give the overtone, basically, which Sarah did all the time, all the time. But I definitely wouldn't say it's falsetto. Falsetto, you can't really, you know, you need a mic, you know, to even hear what it is, if that makes sense. It does make sense. It's a lot to unpack.
You got to give us some more now. Okay, you gave us just that much.
Oh, that was horrible, but
no, you explained it so beautifully in those couple of seconds. Would you give us a little bit more, if you would, of you know, any tune? Just want to hear some more of your voice. And maybe something swinging as well. I mean, because you have this repertoire, you've got the chops, you got the technique. But most importantly, you're an artist. And so all the you can talk about it technically, but the thing is, it's you know, as Duke said, don't mean to think if it ain't got that swing. And you got the swing, brother.
Yeah, we can
swing. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can swing. I don't know. Let's see. What you feeling? That could be a lot of things. Right. All of me, why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I'll never use them. Take my arms, I wanna lose them. See, the blend of gospel and jazz sort of within the same element versus, you know, straight ahead bebop. So anyway, that's just an example of sort of even merging the genres of just even putting a more contemporary lick versus like a Sarah who would be obviously a little more bebop heavy in some of the improvisatory elements of singing. But anyway, that's just something.
You left us hanging there. You took me way up here. That's okay. We're going to get a chance to hear much more of you, man. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
That was absolutely gorgeous. Let me ask you about, I think you did explain it already, but how did school prepare you for the professional career that you're doing? I imagine it was even more than the vocal lessons, but going to school did help prepare you for the profession.
Certainly. Yeah, here's the thing. School is the discipline piece of it. And like, especially to all the singers who feel like they don't want to necessarily go that way. And I always have to put out there, there's really no right or wrong. You just sort of have to find what works for you and stick to it. The conventional setting of academia, to me, it's more of the discipline element of having a routine, a regimen to practicing, regardless of what the genre is. It's sort of just being in a place where you can sort of cultivate your talent and being amongst experts that are there to sort of help navigate that process. And so I think the conventional setting is just really important, and it was very instrumental for me because here I had all this talent and didn't necessarily know where to place it, you know, to sort of see it grow. So I'm big on education. And if, you know, if someone's out there is like, you know, that's not my thing, get a private teacher, you know, get someone who is an expert in sort of what you're doing and really, 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 really drill down on learning your craft. You know, the conventional setting just sort of has it all mapped out. The curriculum is there. you know exactly sort of what you're getting, you know, whether it's improvisation class, music history, all skills, theory, all of that. It's sort of all laid out, and you just have to, all you have to do is just sort of walk the line, you know. If you take a more independent route, which is not bad, you just sort of have to connect those pieces, and you may not have the same support. But I'd say for me, it definitely helped me to get on the right track. And then it showed me what was possible. Yeah, it showed me what was possible. Like my freshman year at Morgan, I was asked to sing with a group of singers who went to Marcellus. And we flew out to Paris and did a piece called All Rise. I don't know if you ever heard of beautiful movements. And it was the first time I sort of saw jazz, gospel, classical, like sort of all fused on a high level. I was blown away, you know, as coming from Virginia. I hadn't heard anything, just not even close to even start listening to that music. But it was through my connection of school that I was exposed to it. And so that's another element as well, sort of being within a more conventional setting sort of increases your visibility and definitely allows for more opportunities.
Great advice. We always tell our students, don't wait and try to be prepared. And don't try to get prepared. Be prepared.
Be prepared. Yes.
And you were for those experiences. Please talk a little bit about talking about great experiences. You did one of the most beautiful works ever by Duke Ellington. You did one of the sacred concerts. Just talk a little bit about that. Where was that? Where did it take place? And what was the whole experience like?
Oh yeah. So that first of all, I love Duke Ellington's sacred concerts, and I think he wrote the pieces towards the end of his life, and so I think that alone shows up in the music. And so I sort of got exposed to it in college. We just did excerpts. You know, we didn't do the full kabang, but we did excerpts, you know, of the work, and I just took to some of the tunes. Some of the tunes I just connected to, like Come Sunday, Almighty God, Freedom is another tune in there. All of them just connected to me, and I was just fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. And this was years ago at the Strathmore Hall in Baltimore, Maryland. It may not even be in Baltimore, but I know it's definitely in Maryland, where the late Dave Baker was there with the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks. And I was there just as a fan, you know, of the work. At that time, there was a connection with my school, but I had finished my first degree, so I was an alumnus, just sort of supporting. And long story short, one of the soloists sort of fell back, or got ill, or something just happened, and Dave Baker needed a soloist. And so the chair of the department at that time found me and was like, how's your voice today? You know, because I'm one of those kind of like, even just now, I have to sort of prepare for it, you know. And I was like, no, not today. He was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And at that time, I didn't realize the significance. I knew who he was, but I didn't realize the significance. And he said, hey, can you do da-da-da-da, da-da-da? He wants to hear you right now in the back. And so we went in the back, and they started playing Almighty God. So are you familiar with the tune? Yeah, the bass player was like, I mean, he was just nailing it, and I just was blown away. And he looked at me and, you know, gave me the cue to start. And so I sung a little bit of it. As soon as I would say I did maybe 2 measures, then he stopped me and said, you're on tonight. Are you ready? And the rest was history. I mean, I was just out of body in a moment. I just was just trying to make sure I could pull it off. And then afterwards, like, all of my mentors were like, do you know who that is and the significance and da-da-da-da and what just took place? And there were some critics in the audience. So the next day, you know, there was write-ups of, you know, such a fabulous countertenor, da-da-da-da. And I would just always cherish that moment. And then we got to talk afterwards, and you know, take in some of the wisdom, and his point to me was, keep doing what you do, you know, be authentic to yourself. And he was like, never change, you know, do what you do, basically. Because I think as young singers, we find ourselves trying to emulate. Because even when I did the Sarah Vaughan competition, I didn't really I didn't go in with the mindset of like, let me do all of her quotes or all of her things. You know, I sort of went in with, how do I sort of show who I am, but still sort of carry the legacy of what she did.
Interesting. I mean, that was a great story. What songs? What did you sing for the competition? I'm just curious. What did you do?
Yeah, we had to do our own arrangements and put together our own, set list. It was fun. I opened up with "Good Morning Heartache" from Lady Sings the Blues, and then I went into Cole Porter, "Just One of Those Things," and I did a small quote of "All God's Chillin' Got Rhythm," which I think sort of threw them off because a lot of people don't bring that in. And that again was that church element. Boom, beep, boom, beep, boom, 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 beep, boom, boom. It was just very, and we paired that with Just One of Those Things. Wow. And then I had to do a ballad. Sarah was a bebop queen, but she also could just wear out a ballad. Right. And I did Misty. And I ended with Misty. And when I saw the crowd stand up, I didn't know if that was appropriate. Like, I didn't know if that was like an indication of anything. So I was just trying to just stay focused. Like, this is a competition. Stay seated. Like, everyone just be quiet. Because here you have this huge panel of luminaries. Sheila Jordan, who I think was like turning 93 or 4. Don't quote me, but at least in their 90s, like that particular week. So definitely was a lot of pressure. But those were the tunes.
Right. Congratulations again. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to hearing you, of course. Tell us about, I know you got some upcoming engagements. Folks want to hear and see you, but tell us about some things you have coming up, if you would.
Yeah, so I'm heading to Baltimore, Maryland in the morning. Right. My band is, some of them are in New York, and we're all sort of commuting East Coast. And my final stop is in Philly at a South Jazz Club, one of the premier jazz clubs. I'm headlining Friday and Saturday.
Headlining,
yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, Friday and Saturday. So all my friends from Morgan State, will come up. And while I'm out there, I'm doing some clinics and master classes, and just because I have a good solid support system in that area. So I'm sure I'll be busy. But I think for people to follow and know what's next, probably website is the best. And then my website is G as in George, G Thomas Allen Music.com. Yeah, but we have so many things coming up. Your event, which you could talk more about, and I think I'm doing something with Washington Performing Arts in Maryland, June the 11th. Then I'm at Minton's Playhouse in Harlem in July. Right. I'm doing White Plains New York Jazz Festival in September, and I'm in Canada in May. So just all over. But I would say website, then you can sort of click on everything and sort of see. But pretty busy.
Gotcha. And we're excited about seeing you, and we are so glad we got you before you take off on the rest of the year. But
Chicago, I love. Listen.
Well, we're going to have you June 22nd. No, I'm sorry, June 24th.
24th.
The last Friday in June. Chicago West Community Music Center, our organization, will be presenting what they call Night Out in the Parks, a series of concerts, and you'll be opening the series for us.
I love that.
We're excited. It's going to be at the Columbus Park Refectory, and you can check our website as well, cwcmc.org.
Okay.
And I'm certain you'll probably have it posted on yours as we get closer to the date. And
absolutely.
we expect a lot of folks to want to come out and see you in person.
We're going to have a good time.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, I'm excited. We're actually, my MD is preparing music specifically for that, so
that's great.
I'm excited.
Gotcha. I can't thank you enough for taking time with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Before we wrap it up, is there anything you would like to just tell the world about yourself? Anything?
Well, I just always tell people, be apologetically yourself. That's just sort of my thing, and keep telling the story. I think the beauty about jazz is the conversation element, and some of the other genres are sort of prescribed, sort of written out notation. You sort of have to do exactly what's on the paper. But for those jazz lovers, keep loving it, keep helping us push it forward, keep it alive. It's not old music. It's not. It's just beautiful music, and you can sort of hear how it has influenced everything.
Yes.
You know, before R&B there was jazz. Before hip hop there was jazz. You know, and so my message is always understand the historic context to it, and you know, lean into the being just sort of grateful for the music.
G. Thomas Allen, thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Would you sing us out of sing us out of here tonight? Would you
Oh
got? Just
man,
something,
Lord, I need some water. Let's see.
Just,
I don't
ready
know.
for you.
To sing out.
Just sing us out. You can just whatever you feel.
Um,
Just a little something.
I don't know what's in my head. What's in my head? Always something.
I should have some. I'm sorry. I should have brought you some water as well.
I'd love
That's
to hear you play. I hate to put you on the spot.
Oh goodness.
See. This
I would do it. That's fair enough. I'll do it. You're right.
Do that. Let me see.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What you see?
No. That's fine. I'm just trying to think the bridge part. Yeah, we'll do the original. That's fine. One more time. You did such a beautiful intro.
No, I just said.
Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree, and I feel I'm clinging to a cloud I can't understand. I get misty just holding your hand. Walk my way, and 1,000 violins begin to play, or it might be the sound of your hello, the music I hear. I'm too misty. The moment you're near. Oh, yeah. I was so engaged with you playing.
Thank you,
oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm honored. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. That was, I can't wait till June 24th.
Yes. In the evening, I got my energy and
Thank you.
full
That was
band.
great. We're good, guys. Thank you.
We're good.
I
Okay.
can't thank you enough.